Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I am Jodi Grunwald, your host, and in this episode, I have the inFredible, as we say, Fred Wasiak, President and CEO of the Food Bank of South Jersey, joining me as my special guest co-host. Together, we interview Richard Uniacke, President, Bridges Outreach. Richard shares about his time on the stage as an actor. It is always super fun to hear our guests share childhood memories of what lit them up back then and listen to what brought them to where they are today. Changemakers making positive change in their corner of the world and beyond. Bridges Outreach ends homelessness through street outreach and intensive case management, focusing on health, housing, and independence. Bridges forms relationships with those experiencing homelessness while meeting their most urgent needs. The number of those homeless in the catchment area that they service is astounding. Take a listen to this episode via the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel or stream on all streaming sites. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day, Live It. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I am Jodi Grunwald, and as I say every single week, I get to interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best possible way possible. And I'm so excited to have back, we've decided it's now 4 times, but Fred has now been on the podcast. Fred Wasiak has been on the podcast now for four episodes. How are you, Fred?
Oh, I'm doing well this afternoon. Thank you, Jodi, and thank you for having me again. This is like, we were talking earlier. It's 5 times I get the SNL jacket. Is this okay?
Well, the best part is, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes too, but on another conversation, Rich said the same thing and asked if Fred was getting the jacket too from SNL.
Great minds think alike. That's why we're here. This is beautiful.
Exactly. And I felt very out of the loop because I didn't realize that was what it was about. So now I'm going to have to get you the jacket that says Today is the Day Changemakers on, and myself one too.
That's true.
So I'm going to just read a little of your bio, Fred. If you don't know who Fred is by now, 4th episode, you really need to know because he's an amazing, incredible human being. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Food Bank of South Jersey, and he is also the principal owner of Humanics Consulting. He has a long bio of an incredible works that he has done over the years, but Fred has served on boards of directors for numerous nonprofit organizations, and prior to joining the Food Bank, he, as I said, was the owner and still is the owner consultant principal of Humanics Consulting, where he provided consulting, training, coaching, and development services for boards, staff, and nonprofit organizations, and had 27 years in several YMCAs spanning from New York to New Jersey as a program director to CEO, and worked for Goodwill Industries of New Jersey. And it goes on, Fred, on and on. But also, my favorite part is that you were our Inspire Change honoree last year for the Today's the Day Changemakers, for the forum. And if you look up Fred, he's a truly incredible change maker. So thanks, Fred, for being here today.
Oh, thank you for that kind introduction, Jodi. It's nice to be again here with you, and it's a great conversation we're going to have today.
Yes, and our guest, who I have to say, we talked about this too before the show, we were all introduced. You introduced me to Richard back in December. It is now April. It took us a little bit to get together, but here we are. We're busy people. Richard, I should have asked you this before the podcast. I want to say your last name correctly. Can you say it for everyone?
I thought that might come up. It's Uniacke.
Uniacke. Okay,
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
That's very easy.
It is once you hear it, right? But everybody gets nervous around it.
No, it's perfect. All right, that's easy. So Richard Uniacke is the president at Bridges Outreach, located in both Summit and Newark, New Jersey, and has been working to end homelessness since joining in May of 2018. Bridges currently serves both Essex and Union counties, providing street outreach services, including nightly outreach in Newark, case management focused on exits from homelessness and prevention of imminent homelessness, and causing good trouble in the name of those who most vulnerable. I'm sorry, let me re-say that. And causing good trouble. I like that. And causing good trouble in the name of those most vulnerable neighbors among us. Prior to joining Bridges, Richard worked on food insecurity for 17 years while working for the Community Food Bank of New Jersey in a myriad of roles. I see there's some sort of connection here. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And he lives in Scotch Plains, is notoriously, I love this part, notoriously full of energy, loves to spend as much time as possible outside, and enjoys performing on stage. And we definitely have to talk about that.
There's a connection right there.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because for those who don't know, I serve in many roles, but one of them is being the CEO of a nonprofit organization called the Applauder Kids Foundation. And so it's all about the performing arts for kids who are unfortunately cannot afford to continue to take lessons. I want to hear, just before we get started, we're going to start with this. On stage, tell us, Richard.
Yeah. I often describe myself as being a recovering actor. I was always a musical theater guy, and I did plays as well, but choirs, musicals were always my thing. So it's something that I do as often as I can. And actually, more recently, so I'm at our Summit office now, and there are 3 theater companies here. One of them does a play that's non-equity every year, and I was cast in a show that was going to air last weekend of March, first weekend in April of 2020. So it got canceled. And then same time frame, brought it back 2022, and I couldn't do it because I had a new baby in the house. And I was like, I can't do it now. I'm out. I can't believe I can't do it now. We were ready to go. We were so close. Based on that timing in 2020, we were so close. I was off book. We were ready to rock. So I do like an audience.
Well, this is going to work out really good then. This is great.
We're good.
We're downloaded in like 72 countries and over 700 cities typically, in an episode. So this will be good. Your voice will be heard. This is your stage. No worries. Did you know about this, Fred, that he had this talent?
Well, I've seen him again up front in front of groups, and he is very comfortable speaking with passion and talent. So, but I didn't hear him sing any, but I certainly, saw leadership come out of Rich, and but I'm looking forward to this. So when the toddler gets older, I'm ready for some tickets, Jodi. I think we should be invited to the first show
with our jackets. We'll have our jackets on.
Yes, by then.
She is primed. I have 2 older sons, and neither of them has any interest in singing or theater. But my little girl already likes to sing. She is 2.5. She likes to sing. She is quite the personality. So possibly a future performer, although I think I see some performances already currently in my life. And she's funny because sometimes, she's obsessed with Frozen. Huge surprise there. Sometimes a song will come on and I'll be singing it and she will say, "No, not you, Daddy."
Oh my God.
And I'm like, whoa. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool. I'm here for it.
Just
I'm here for it.
Start getting used to it.
Yes. Yes. I'm getting accustomed to many, many new things. This is definitely a different experience for my sons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, everybody says it who has both. So absolutely. I have 2 daughters. It's a definite different experience. Good luck.
So then, honestly, let me just tell you quickly what I typically ask parents of daughters. I'm like, is my little girl a genius, or is this just the way girls are? And to a person, they go, "Oh, that's girls."
Well, it's both.
Yeah, maybe both. Yeah,
because they know their ingenuity just knows how to get to dad's, papa's heartstrings.
Man,
they're way ahead of us.
Really? I mean, she's quick.
Yeah,
she's quick.
That's why I said let this be a good
toes.
training ground for what's to come.
Yeah, indeed.
And it's a beautiful journey.
Oh yeah, love it.
And Fred has, sons, son and daughters, right? So you've been here before. I have only the girls. I have nothing to compare it to, but I hear stories that the boys can be just a little easier at times.
At times, yeah, I think so.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
But so Richard, I always do this with my podcast guests. I like to go back in time a little bit.
Sure.
And kind of learn a little bit more about, your background, where you were born, what your loves were as a kid, what type of child you were. Were you always the actor and ready to perform? Give us a little bit of background about Richard growing up.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say I was pretty much always the actor. I grew up in Westfield in Union County, New Jersey, from the time I was in first grade anyway. My father was an FBI agent and Army Special Forces before that. My mom is still a phys ed teacher. at South Plainfield High School, recently celebrated her 75th birthday. You'd never know it. And she's just super, super active. And I was always in choirs and always wanted to be in the little plays. And, the way I remember it, when I went into middle school, I found out that they do like a big musical in. So I went home and I said, I want to do this. And my parents would not let me audition. They were pretty strict, I would say, pretty confining at times. And they said, listen, it's a new school, all these things. Let's make sure you can get great grades first. So then I saw, it was called Logger's Lament. We did like these shows that they would kind of write. And it was so amazing. And I was sitting in the audience just captivated. And just more than that, really filled with this, I want to be up there. I have to be up there. You're right. To this day, I can't go see a show and be like anything other than I want to be up there. I really want to be doing that. That's why I say kind of recovering actor. So they wouldn't let me do it. I loved it. Loved it. 7th grade, they said, all right, if you get straight A's, this had never happened before in my educational career. If you get straight A's, you can audition. So I got straight A's every marking period in 7th grade, and I auditioned and I got the lead. And I was like, come on, I've been trying to tell you I'm supposed to be up there. And there was it. I was so hooked. And 8th grade, I got the lead. And I was like, they had the superlatives in 8th grade. And I and one of my classmates, I think it was Magali, we were voted most talented or something. Like, that was just like, that was who I am. That was my whole identity. Get into high school, and same kind of thing. It's all the choirs, the tiny little madrigal chorus to the show choir kind of stuff. And I was in every musical. And my favorite was in junior year, we did Hair. And I played Burger in Hair as a junior. And a buddy of mine who was a senior played Claude. And after we graduated, he went off into the European tour of Hair. And I tried to convince my parents to let me take a gap year between junior and senior year of high school. And you can guess how that went. To go do the European tour of Hair. And I didn't get to do it. So I was a little less enamored senior year when we did Fiddler. I was just, I don't know. I was young and stupid. And so I was a little miffed about it. And then as a consequence of that experience, fun though it was, I actually didn't pursue it when I went off to college first time around, which was clearly a mistake because I would have enjoyed the heck out of it. But then, I'm one of those, young people who had to take a little time to find their way. So I actually eventually started going to school full time at night for real at Kean University in September of 2001, just a few months after starting to work at the Community Food Bank of New Jersey in April of 2001, after a circuitous route of, waiting tables and bartending and a stint selling cars. And then when I was at Kean, and I'll wrap this part of it up, right? And when I was at Kean, I started taking some drama classes, and I'm like, oh man, I miss this. But I'm working full time and I'm going to school full time at night, and it's like, how am I possibly going to do this? And my drama teacher for one of the classes, amazing guy named Ernest Vaughn, convinced me to take a small part, Steve Hubble, the upstairs neighbor and landlord in Streetcar Named Desire. Because I'm just like, listen, I'm not going to be able to come to any of your rehearsals. They're during my class or they're during my work at the food bank. But I promised myself that whenever I finished my coursework, I would audition for whatever they were doing, and I would do it. And it turned out they were doing Ragtime. So I auditioned for Ragtime and got the part of Tata, and I played Tata in Ragtime at Kean right after graduating from my undergrad over there. So I've continued to do a little bit of community theater, and maybe someday more, but we'll see.
Well, I can tell you right now, we'll talk offline because we have a lot of things with Applaud Our Kids that we look for adult talent, and they go in front of celebrity judges from TV, film, and Broadway. So we'll talk about that offline, but I definitely can help out with finding, if you have the time, I definitely can help you find things to do to, help an organization that wants to help more kids do what you love to do, and they can't because they can't afford to. But I'm so it's so interesting. This is what I love about these types of conversations. So I'm going to ask you, Fred, did you know all this about Rich?
No, and I lived in Westfield for a while, and so it's nice that I love small world stuff,
Wow.
and the
Wow.
fact that I was,
Wow.
my family and I, we were there 99 to 2004,
Yeah.
and so I'm sure we passed through the streets or somewhere
Wow.
downtown, the theater or whatever.
Right. You weren't at the
Rialdo.
Y, were you?
Yes, I was at the
You
Westfield.
were, man.
Were you a
We
member at
have
some point?
we have always been members of the Y. My niece went to aftercare at the Y.
Oh,
Like, yeah. I mean, I used
awesome.
to, that's where I got hooked on racquetball, was at that
Yes.
Y. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, good. I know. So that's great. Great small
yeah.
paths for that.
Yeah.
But can I jump in here, Jody?
Yes, all you go.
Yeah, so interesting. The one of the things that I'm curious about, and I think what I've experienced is every role you get prepares you for the next one.
Mm.
And you think about this journey that you had, the just even from wanting to do something with passion, right? And then so it sounds like it was deflated at some point, not to take a gap year. Then you
Yeah.
took a step back and you refigured, and then you went forward. And and I applaud you for school full time, trying to enjoy your passion of things. But then you started at the community food bank, and the beginning of 2000, as we all experienced, especially in that area of Westfield of 9/11.
Mm.
Fast forward, you're in the food bank now for 7 years and other things, and then we have the Great Recession. And now you are where you are now, Rich. And you're doing incredible work. I mean, just this whole journey. What do you feel in that journey prepared you for your mission work right now with Bridges Outreach? How did Bridges find you, and how did your journey prepare you for this just incredible work that you're doing for the communities at Bridges Outreach?
I really think that it all comes down to the incredible opportunity I had to work under Kathleen DiChiara. I mean,
Legend.
here's a legend, right? An icon, a pioneer in food banking in the US, honored by presidents of the United States and a pope, which I know because I was her head of marketing for a while when we were doing the 30th anniversary. I had to put some of that stuff together. Absolute icon. And so much of that time showed me that there really isn't any limit to what we can accomplish in the name of a cause this important, right? So, I mean, I just so many key formative experiences at the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. I mean, you mentioned September 11th, 2001, right? So I started in April of 2001, September of 2001, right? That was an incredibly powerful, turning point for so many of us. But from the lens of the food bank, what I saw was this incredible outpouring of community and people who wanted to be a part of helping, right? The Community Food Bank of New Jersey is critical infrastructure for the state, in so many respects. And we would all show up to work super early, right? You'd show up at 6 a.m., just to get in and start working because this was so important what we were all doing. And we all felt like we had some key role in the work and in the response. Meanwhile, my father was one of the volunteers at Ground Zero as an FBI agent. And I'm, over here, and there was a great sense of pride in that. And at the same time, we would come to work at 6 a.m. to find hundreds of people lined up, waiting for their turn to help, and vehicles, trucks, tractor trailers lined up the street and down the avenue, waiting to get unloaded because supplies of all kinds were just being sent from all across the continent to ground zero, loosely. And so much of it was being routed to the Community Food Bank of New Jersey in Hillside. So volunteers were desperately needed to unload and sort floor-loaded, supplies. I'll never forget the Canada Cares bears. There was a big truck that came in that had a giant teddy bear painted on it, holding a Canadian flag and an American flag. And it was filled with stuffed animals that heartbreakingly had little notes tied around, right? That were supposed to be going to ground zero. I mean, unbelievable outpouring of support, literally from all over the continent. So we saw what a response can look like and a coming together of community in a time of crisis. And that absolutely informed our experience of kind of the economic collapse of 2008 and banks failing, and our ability to partner with Bruce Springsteen, who let us use his likeness to create a campaign called "We Can't Let This Bank Fail." And I had the great honor of being, in the marketing department at that time and being able to be a part of that. And ultimately, I felt like, people have called the role that I played over 17 years as like an intrapreneur, right? But like, because you had Kathleen, an entrepreneur, right, who started this out of the back of her station wagon in Summit, New Jersey, no less, right?
So I know, that's amazing.
It's like a, ding, ding, ding. I don't know if anybody knows Armchair Expert, another podcast, but like this is just a lot of small world stuff here. So she would let you do whatever you could make a business case for, right? So you could just create value. I spent the first 7 years in programs, creating programs that helped kids, whether it was the backpack program that's now pretty widespread in the state. We started that, copied what some other folks in the country had done, and replicated it in some areas. Kids Cafe, the after school programs we were doing. We had a program called the Kids Closet that distributed, packages of brand new children's clothing for kids in need. It was literally for them, tailored and picked by volunteers. We had a free school supply store called Tools for Schools, part of the Kids in Need Foundation, where teachers in schools with 70% or more combined free and reduced lunch could come and shop for free twice a year.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, just found myself, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. And then it was like, all right, fine. Well, then you do it, right? So then I'm getting into development, I'm getting into marketing, et cetera. So when it came time for Kathleen to retire, I was one of 3 people who were internal candidates for this, and we wanted to succeed her. And I had been there, I guess, about 15 years at the time, and I felt like I had done a lot. And they didn't hire me; they hired someone else. Didn't hire any of us internal candidates. And then the person they did hire, Deborah Vizzi, promoted me to vice president for the Southern Branch down in South Jersey. So I started commuting every day, 101 miles each way to Egg Harbor Township, and I was running Atlantic, Cape May, and Cumberland counties, which was super fun. And I don't know, it felt at the time kind of like CEO light. I had an advisory board, not a board of trustees. I didn't exactly have full responsibility to raise all the revenue for our cost, but I got to really be a part of everything. They have a hybrid. I'm still saying, wait, they have a hybrid down there where they also have a choice pantry. It was so cool. Yeah. And Atlantic City is a special place.
Very nice.
And then when Deborah left, I again threw my hat in the ring to be CEO. And as you may know, they hired Carlos Rodriguez. Yeah. So again, they didn't hire me, right? But the morning after a call with then board chair Josh Weinrich, where it was clear to me that they had their guy, they had their candidate, I get a call from Kathleen DiChiara. I am at breakfast at the Borgata because we had an event that night at the Atlantic City Convention Center. I had taken the call with Josh from my car in the loading dock because, you wear all the hats. And Kathleen calls me and tells me that Lois Bott is retiring from Bridges after 14 years as executive director. She is advising the search committee, and she would love to recommend me for the role. Bridges was also founded in Summit, New Jersey, and was celebrating 30 years.
Wow.
And again, it's all comes back to Kathleen DiChiara. So I looked at it, and I figured, let me throw my hat in the ring and at least start the interview process. And what I found was an organization that I thought was in a position to really make lasting change. right? Because that's the hard thing when you're working on food insecurity. There's so many needs, there's
Yeah.
so much to do. And as we've seen with COVID, food insecurity has not gone down, right? So everybody's distributing more and more food, but the need is not shrinking. And that's all of our objectives, right? Work ourselves out
Yeah.
of business, ultimately.
Absolutely.
Not have to have this be done. And I really thought that Bridges may be in a place where we could be making that kind of objective impact on homelessness. So I took the leap, and it's been almost 6 years that I've been there in this role now. Heck of a ride.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And follow-up is from food insecurity, and we know it's not food insecurity, it's poverty. And you think about, we think about in the food bank of South Jersey, the cost of food is up, the lines, but you talk about the social determinants of health. I mean, you are right in the middle of a housing crisis and rent rates and mortgage rates and all that. How are you and your team managing that because you can be homeless, but there might be food, right?
Yeah.
But so how are you managing that? Because if we're seeing food lines up, I know the challenge that you have before you and your team.
Yeah, it's true. So we have really, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say we've really exploded since COVID. And I again have to credit my experiences under Kathleen at the Community Food Bank for the way we responded to COVID, right? Because we were all given a seemingly simple piece of advice, right? We were told, just stay home. But you can't do that if you don't have one. So we found ourselves at the Department of Health and Community Wellness in Newark in late March on a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning, getting fit tested for N95 masks because we were starting a 7 nights a week outreach and engagement program in the city of Newark. We started that officially April 1st of 2020. So we leaned in to the population we were supposed to be here to serve and who could not simply stay home. And I don't think that I would have had that kind of, I swear it was almost a knee-jerk reaction that this is clearly what we have to do. I don't think I would have necessarily had that if I hadn't had the experiences at the food bank. We have a job to do here. We have to lean in. Whatever they're telling everybody else, that doesn't apply to us because it can't. Because there are people who don't fit in that box. And so everything really has started to kind of build from there. We continue to be on the streets of Newark every single night. And we are seeing now thousands of people a year on street outreach and thousands of people a year in case management settings. And it's all getting documented in the HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System that the state requires us to use. And that kind of documented volume has changed a few things, right? It's made us have, a different kind of role in administering some of the funding that prevents imminent homelessness or creates rapid rehousing opportunities. It also puts us in a position to have data about unsheltered homelessness that really confronts the realities of the point in time count, for example, that is otherwise the best measure that anybody has. So our ability to provide organic data that's collected just by each person our team meets on the streets has really kind of elevated Bridges to a level where we all kind of need each other, right? The city of Newark needs us as a partner. The state of New Jersey, DCA, needs us as a partner because we're seeing such a disproportionate amount of the volume. So then we're getting more state funding to provide that specific kind of support to prevent and exit experiences of homelessness. And it's just, we've just grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And so our numbers have really, year over year kind of exploded in terms of our impact. And what I love about that is that it's permanent housing. It's solved, right? you're still poor, you're still hungry. We still have other things to do, right? If you're getting SSI, you're on a housing voucher, something like that. It's still complicated. But homelessness, as complicated as it is, has a really simple solution. It's a home, right? It's really that easy and that hard, right? At the same time, as we all know. But so
keeps you busy.
It sure does. It sure does. And so we've seen significant increases in need in that regard. We're really coming up against limits and the affordable housing crisis that we're all dealing with, and but there are really a lot of bright spots, right? You mentioned social determinants of health, and now there's a lot of conversations under Medicaid and the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services around health-related social needs. It's like it's the exact same thing with a new acronym, for me anyway, a new acronym.
Too many acronyms out there.
There's so much. It's hard to keep up, but it clearly says homelessness is a health issue. And housing is healthcare.
Yeah. So
Medicaid should have a funding role in this, and everything's about to change. But it's that kind of momentum that we're seeing right now that I think I'll talk about Newark a little bit. I think COVID put us on that path, right? COVID forced people to think differently. It bent and broke rules. Jobs that would never have been remote were instantly remote. Whether they were supposed to be for 2 weeks or not, they were instantly remote, right? So congregate shelters were suddenly no good for a respiratory-borne pandemic. So the city of Newark stood up a hotel by Newark Airport, with 425 hotel rooms for people who were experiencing homelessness, where they would stay indefinitely because you couldn't go to the normal congregate shelters. So you'd have 3 meals a day and you'd have on-site case management. And that really shattered that pervasive view that some people would just rather be homeless. No, they wouldn't. They just like something that they can say yes to. So this really allowed that to happen in a new way. And it also forced the city to start thinking long-term, because you couldn't unring that bell. Like that was seen initially as a temporary pandemic response, but you couldn't turn it off. You'd have 425 people who were suddenly homeless again at Newark Penn. So the city had to be thinking about, how do we transition folks from this into permanent housing? That's the only thing that can work, right? So that was the path that we started off on, and we were partners in this, from day one. And and now you've got Mayor Baraka, who has declared that they're going to end chronic homelessness. They've got a strategic plan to end chronic homelessness. We've seen a reduction year over year of unsheltered homelessness in Newark of 57.6%, and it's just like it's awesome. There's a lot of work, and the problem's growing, but there's an alignment of stars. There's a moment that we are here to meet right now. So all in all, I'm pretty excited about it, as hard as it is.
Well, Jodi, you can see the passion I was talking about with Rich. I mean, it's
yeah, it exudes through the Zoom screen. That's for sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, Rich, you've shared with us, the things that you're passionate about and what your organization is passionate about. But for those who are kind of, layman in understanding what Bridges does, give us kind of the oversight of, what Bridges does as an organization, and also how do people get involved to help? Yeah,
thank you for that. I tend to just easily get on my soapbox there, but
it's important.
To put it simply, we provide street outreach and intensive case management that is aimed at preventing and ending experiences of homelessness. That's really all it is at its core. We go out and meet people where they are, whether it's in an office or it's on the street somewhere, or it's in an abandoned building somewhere. And we try to connect them to the homeless services and prevention ecosystem such that it is, because otherwise they're not. I think too often folks, in Trenton, folks who are legislating, perhaps think that if you're experiencing homelessness in New Jersey, you call 211, you get placed in a shelter, now you've got case management, and you're on the path out of homelessness. And that's just not always true. Maybe less than people would think. Is that really the way that goes? Right. So we go out there from the 35-year roots of Bridges, and we engage with people on the streets, and we give them some things that we know that they need right now, some food, some hygiene items, some clothing items, something to build enough trust, enough rapport to try to connect them to more. Right. And it's kind of like motivational interviewing or mobile case management right there on the streets. We're trying to figure out how to generate enough wins so that we can build some trust, because ultimately what we really need to get you connected to is case management. Right. We'd love for you to get into a shelter tonight, understand all the reasons why you might be inclined not to take us up on that offer, depending upon what bed might be open at what shelter. But we're trying to get you connected to case management, because those case managers, they can help you end your homelessness. They really can. They really, really can. Obviously, we've got this looming, scarcity of deeply affordable housing units, and that's a key strategic question for Bridges outreach at this time, is what role we might play in that. But that's the goal, right? So somebody comes in, they're facing imminent homelessness. Okay, great. We're going to figure out how to stop that. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if we've got rental arrears, if we've got utility arrears, if we've got 1 month of back rent, 12 months. I mean, there's all different things that people are dealing with, whether you're escaping domestic abuse, or any number of things, whatever it is. All right. Where are we starting from? Right? Do we need to help you with identity documents, right? Social security card, birth certificate, identification, like a state issue ID, right? Those are things that for a person experiencing unsheltered homelessness, it's not easy to retain those documents, right? You hear about encampment sweeps. It's apropos that we're having this conversation this week, because on Monday, the Supreme Court started hearing oral arguments in the case of Johnson v. Grants Pass, Oregon. So this will have, presumably in June, the Supreme Court handing down a decision that will rule on the constitutionality of criminalizing unsheltered homelessness. Can you be fined or perhaps arrested for sleeping outside on public property? Because that's what Grants Pass, Oregon has been doing. Tickets of $295 for sleeping outside. They're calling it illegal camping. So the Supreme Court sounded very much like they are going to end up ruling on behalf of Grants Pass, putting us in a situation where states or municipalities, perhaps in the case of New Jersey, could create ordinances like that criminalize homelessness. So we have that kind of looming as context. So we're just laser focused on those activities. But then with all the data, the quantitative and the qualitative around the numbers of people who are out there and the journeys that they are sharing with us that we are documenting, we're really trying to affect systems change, right? We're really trying to, push for change in the way that people are treated at shelters, and what kinds of shelters are available for folks, and the kinds of investments that are made to meet the needs of these folks who seem to be falling through the cracks of what exists now. I'll give you a quick example. The point in time count in 2023 identified, I think the number was 99 unsheltered people in the city of Newark. 99. Our unduplicated number, all documented in the HMIS system, was 25 times that number. Yeah. So, and it's organic, right? That team is just meet with a person. I'm putting your information in there if it's not already in there, and documenting our interaction if we were. So having that kind of volume and being able to really show what the need is, and being able to speak from the perspective of the journeys that these folks are having, because that's a big part of meeting people where they are. It's really believing them of their experiences, taking them as the truth, right? And then it feels like a responsibility to do something about it. You know what I mean? Like in grant proposals, we might write things like Bridges is uniquely positioned to, but the other side of that coin is that means we have to do it. There isn't anybody else who can, So that's kind of how we approach the work. And we do have volunteers come out with us on street outreach runs. Those are volunteer supported. Every Saturday morning we're in Newark, Every Sunday morning, we're in Irvington. We're getting ready to start one in Union County, probably in Plainfield on a Thursday evening, ideally before the end of the second quarter. That'll be up and running. It's the same kind of thing. It's how can we put together pieces that are going to enable people to come and get connected to more services, because it's tough. It's tough, especially with folks who are chronically homeless, because they've been around, they've been to the agencies, and I know I could talk for the entire hour by myself, but one of the things that I feel like has been a key learning for me, coming from food insecurity to housing insecurity, is the nature of the conversations and the nature of just the attitudes and perspectives about hunger versus homelessness, right? And when I was in food banking, you would say things like 1 in 5 kids in New Jersey is hungry, and you have people go, "Oh my God, I have to do something about that. I should help." Right. And they're your neighbors, and they're your kids' friends. And you can't tell by looking at somebody whether they're having trouble keeping food on the table. And it just, I could cry right now, right? I spent so much time in that world. It is immediately something that I think 99.99% of the time people can identify with. Everyone knows what it feels like to be hungry. You don't know what it feels like to experience homelessness unless you have experienced homelessness.
Yeah.
And we look at homelessness as though it's your fault. You are a product of your own bad decisions. You messed up. That whole Horatio Alger, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you had done all the right things, you would not be in this situation. Or we write people off as being mentally ill or drug addicted. And it's really easy to paint people who are experiencing homelessness as an other, and therefore to treat them differently and very, very poorly. And the systems that are set up to administer the supports that those folks need are really set up to avoid potential abuse of those systems. They are not set up to make it easy for you to get what you need.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that I think that we need to change, and one of the things that we're really trying to push for.
You bring up a really good point, and is that a lot of people, and I hate to say generalize, think that it's your fault. How did you let it get to this place? Like, how did you let this happen? What do you say to somebody, who thinks, and maybe somebody who's listening that says, well, I'd work 3 jobs and 5 jobs if and I would never let myself get there. They don't understand how someone can get to that space. What do you say to them?
Well, first, I try to keep my cool. We all see the statistics, and we know that, at minimum wage, it would take you 2 to 3 full-time jobs in New Jersey to afford, the prevailing rent, let alone fair market rent, right? And that every year we hear about how many households in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. Mm-hmm. And when something happens, a health crisis, a vehicle problem, an unexpected expense that very few Americans are really prepared for, what are you going to do? Right? Where would you go? On whose couch would you sleep? Who do you know who's got a spare room? And how long do you think that might last? Right? Is that forever? Or is that going to get kind of awkward? And in this day and age, expensive, right? If you've got no income and you can't help support that household, you're a burden to that household. There's no 2 ways about it. So they're trying to figure out how to help you, but that's not going to be forever. And the number one cause of homelessness in New Jersey right now is being asked to leave a shared residence. So think of all the reasons that would fit into that bucket. Breakup of a relationship, right? Death of a parent even, and you, the adult child, are not on the lease, right? We had people in Plainfield, New Jersey, who had their apartment building, their 49-unit apartment building, condemned because the landlords did not maintain the building properly. So within 48 hours, everybody living there was told they had to vacate. Get all your stuff. This is over. You can't live here anymore. It's condemned. Well, in those 49 units, there were 83 families, many of whom were new Americans. Things happen to people. And it's also a matter of just being pragmatic, because our inability, our failure to provide safe, dignified, shelter options, safe, dignified, permanent housing options, leaves us with 80 to 100 people sleeping in Newark Penn Station every night and asking you for money as you walk by. Nobody likes that, maybe for different reasons, but nobody wins when we fail to provide those things and we have people living like those conditions. And guess what? If we do, and they're not living like that, we all can win. Not to mention the fact that it's actually cost effective, right? You think about the frequent non-emergency use of emergency departments. You think about the police and corrections interactions when you are criminalizing homelessness, right? The healthcare costs, the police and criminal justice costs, the bad look, the experience, all of it paints a pretty ugly picture. And if we take care of people and provide them with housing and provide them with the healthcare that you would hope for yourself, for somebody you care about, not only is it the right thing to do, it's cost effective. It's cheaper. So, kind of whether you look at this from a humanitarian perspective or a pragmatic one, there's really no argument against doing this. And the other thing that I think, as sad as it is, tends to cut through some of it is actually domestic violence. Because, we had a woman, Sherry, who was in an abusive marriage. And if she didn't have dinner on the table and at the right temperature, when her husband got home, she would be assaulted. When she finally told him that she was going to leave, he shot her in the head. She remained brain damaged and blind in one eye, and then experienced homelessness for 26 years in and around Newark Penn Station. Last July, she moved into her own apartment. But it took, right? I told you Penn Station, and we started doing that street outreach in Newark 7 nights a week, April 1st of 2020. It took years. It took hundreds of interactions on the street by our outreach specialists before she finally got connected to case management and finally was able to start moving forward. What else are we supposed to do? We can't let people languish like this. Nobody wins. Everybody loses if we don't. So yeah, I guess the answer is I usually get on the soapbox.
Oh my gosh.
This is the story. No, this is the story I knew deeper than I thought. And thank you for going there because it is so true. Jodi had a great question. Feeding America had a statistic. 82% of the individuals who used Feeding America food banks at one point had 2 jobs. Was it last year with the inflation? Each family on average was paying $375 more a month for food and household items. And when you're just making ends meet, right, that takes a big curveball. And something as simple as gas going up overnight 10 cents a gallon. So if you're a single parent, this is last week, you add that up to travel, to this, that, all of a sudden the family is in crisis because they're meeting ends meet. How am I going to fill my gas tank? Something has to give. Rich, our interactions, I applaud you with the work you're doing. I do have a question, Jodi, though, before we, our time is the work that you are doing with your teams, your volunteers, your board. What an incredible organization. But that work is frontline. You have despair, you have hopelessness, and this woman you're talking about, 26 years, and finally there's a reward of your efforts. How are you combating for yourself, self-care, that secondary trauma, that you taking care of staff who are taking care of, and you're out there yourself? What are some of those ways for other leaders can hear? How does self-care, you mentioned you're outdoors, you have a wonderful family, you like to sing more than in the car by yourself. What do you do? Because your spirit, your charisma is contagious. This is Friday afternoon and you are ready to go do the work that you've been talking about. What's your self-care? What takes care of yourself?
Yeah. You're very kind, Fred. I really appreciate that. When I'm on the right kind of cadence. I like to get a really good workout in early in the morning. I'm a 5 a.m. kind of a guy for that workout. It has me truly shot out of a cannon. That's why I say notoriously, because I had a colleague for a while. I would be in the office early, as early as I could, kind of after the early morning and the school drop off and the what have you. And I would have a tendency, she'd come in, I'd open the door and I'd just start firing off things like, hey, blah, 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 good to see you, whatever. And she would just be like, all right,
Yeah.
you're a lot right now.
Yeah.
So I know
I
know it's a lot.
That's beautiful.
I think it's important, Fred, that you said secondary trauma, because that's actually what it is, right? These
Yeah.
folks are hearing these stories. The story of Sherry, I carry them with me, and they're so powerful and emotional. And my colleagues are hearing hundreds and hundreds of them a year, right? When you hear the numbers of 2,500 on the street and 2,100 in case management, I don't have dozens of case managers or outreach specialists out there. People are dealing with a lot. So an important part of it is acknowledging that and naming it up front, right? And recognizing that's part of this. That's part of this. And not everybody is really cut out for it. I would make a terrible case manager. I think I'd be in tears all the time, right? But there are some true miracle workers on our team doing that work. We really try to focus on wins, right? You have to celebrate victories. There are an awful lot of failures in this, right? The Supreme Court may rule on the side of Grants Pass, right? We did everything we could. We even held a rally this past Monday in Newark and concurrently in Trenton. It was my first rally. Super fun. And we have to celebrate the wins, and we really try to celebrate our staff, right? Getting somebody Social Security benefits turned on and maybe with some arrears, that's a huge victory. It doesn't just have to be getting somebody all the way across the finish line into permanent housing. Although I would be remiss if I didn't say that from 22 to 23, we went from 86 total people housed and stabilized. That was 77 people who exited homelessness into permanent housing, and another 9 whose imminent homelessness we prevented. To 2023, incredible. The total number was 492. Oh, 209 God. People who that team got out of homelessness into permanent housing, and another 283 whose imminent homelessness was prevented. And 51 of those were kids. So there's an awful lot to be excited about. And I guess, this has been coming up a little bit lately. Maybe it's naivete where I don't know that we can't do this. I kind of think we can, right? I don't know if I'm crazy or naive or it's true, right? But I believe we can do this. I believe we are doing this. I think that the numbers show that we are doing this. Yeah. And that we are at this moment. So I try to be that kind of optimistic, energetic guy, for our team and for our cause. And, very tactically, we empower everybody to recognize when somebody has had a particularly hard situation that they've dealt with and give them some space, really proactively. Like, I saw that was a really tense one. You want to go take an hour, you want to go take a walk. If it's a lot, right? You need to take the rest of the day, maybe come in late next day, whatever it is, right? It's more than just, making sure people take their PTO and not all in the last month of the year, but it's like really at every turn being in this together and being aware of that secondary trauma. Training is obviously a really important part of it, but really proactively giving people some space to decompress and to deal with it, because it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And when I see the numbers and I hear the stories, I gotta tell you, I feel wholly unworthy to be the one who gets to talk about it, because they're really just dealing with so much on a daily basis. It's really, truly impressive.
Well, I think the key word is the awareness. Yeah. You're aware. If they're aware, then you're doing something within your leadership, your enthusiasm, your optimism, but also you're giving them space to be aware too. And that's, as you said, that's the key. And congratulations on this passionate vocational mission work you're doing, Rich.
Thank you, Fred.
Beautiful. It truly is. You made mention of that. You don't have hundreds of people on the street. How many are we talking?
We have right now today 26 employees, and that's Essex and Union counties. So we are the street outreach provider for all 21 municipalities. That is 2 people. We have 2 full-time case managers in Union County. Yeah, it's intense. It's intense. And so it's, it's leading a nonprofit. So, right sizing is not something we can do that easily, that quickly necessarily. Right. And that's a part of why I'm so keen on this 1115 waiver, the possibility of some scalable revenue for the volume.
Oh, awesome.
So how do people find out more about Bridges?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. We're at bridgesoutreach.org. There are volunteer opportunities listed there, and people can even do things on their own. The brown bag lunches, both fresh and shelf stable, that accompany every interaction, whether it's in a case management setting in an office or out on the street. Hygiene kits, cold weather packs, clothing items all year round are needed. It's just like Bombas says, socks and undergarments are some of the most requested things. We're also grateful for their sock donations from time to time. As the weather gets warmer, we're almost into May. Bottled water is a huge need. We could never have enough. Very often in a code red situation, it's just about the only thing the outreach team can do is give people more water because there aren't enough cooling stations. That's a whole other podcast interview. And love to get people out there on the streets with us on the front line, as you said, Fred, and helping us out to hand these things out so that our team, who's otherwise going to be out there, can really do those engagements and figure out whether that person is food insecure and needs to make sure that they're connected to all of the food bank network providers, or they're housing insecure and or facing imminent homelessness or currently experiencing homelessness and need to talk to a case manager. That's really what we're trying to tease out, and we can use help being a part of that.
No, thank you. Thank you. And I can't believe we're at that time already. We could have gone at least, I know we could go a whole other hour, I feel like, but I'm going to ask a last question. Unless Fred, is there any last question you had before I ask mine?
No, mine was just, I always curious how leaders take care of themselves, and your charisma and inspiration is contagious. So good luck to you, Rich, and best wishes. And I look forward to our paths physically crossing soon. So, and thank you for your time today, sir.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, Fred. You're far too kind, and I'll definitely look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, good.
Well, Fred, I have a last question for you before I ask Rich. This totally off the cuff.
Okay.
I didn't know this was coming. How do you go about surrounding yourself with such incredible, unbelievable humans? Because the people that you have introduced me to and the people that you are surrounded by, who adore you as much as you adore them, how do you find them? Because they're just, you've created this incredible unit of people that surround you.
Oh, that's an amazing question. I think it's just like and heart-minded people. It's let me use college as an example. If you went to college and you have a roommate, and most of the time that roommate works out, and like, wow, there was no coincidences. And I the small world trail of mission work. I know Rich and I were destined to meet. And we're going to continue to this. And I think it's just the heart and like-minded vocational work that we do. That it's not coincidence, but you're destined to cross paths. And then, conversation like this certainly helps me, inspires me. There's a support. There's a colleague. Both of you, are colleagues, and it's not one and dones. So I think it's just, you find that niche of people that are like and heart-minded, and they find each other just through serendipity, right?
Serendipity, yeah. That's
yeah.
true.
So, but that's kind. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. I think that a lot of people don't really, they're looking for their group. They're looking for the people that they can support, but also that they can feel supported. And it's not always easy to find that. And not all mission related people are the same. It's that passion. And Rich, when you said that, you had that person walk in the door and you're like, what, and you're going on, that's me. And they call me the tornado. That at work, that is my
Oh my
name.
God.
I'm getting a shirt. It's going to say tornado, not
Oh
only
my goodness.
Changemaker. So I totally
I love
understand what
it.
you're saying, because when you're filled with that, that passion and you're ready to go, you're just kind of shooting things out and you're not trying to be anything more than saying, we've got so much to do. Isn't this exciting? So, so
Kindred
I get
spirits, Jodi.
Well,
it.
and the other thing that's inspirational is great book, The 5 a.m. Club. I think Rich wrote that book. I just love what he said. And with the spring now, I'm inspired to just get up maybe a half hour earlier now. Thank you, Rich.
I agree with you. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
It's not an easy thing to do, right? Our days don't exactly end at 5. It's hard to be in that pattern, but if you're designing the ideal day, for me, that absolutely begins in that way.
That's a great start. So thanks for that inspiration.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure.
And I'll ask you my last question that I'm asking this year is, Rich, what is the legacy that you're creating now that you want to leave behind?
Oh boy. I mean, that's a big question. Not one that I think about very much, I guess. I don't know if I don't feel like I'm anywhere near retirement or about
No,
what
no, of course
legacy
not.
is, right? But what what I hope is that, more than whatever, we accomplish while I'm a team member at Bridges, I want more of us to be dissatisfied with people not having basic needs met. Like that's just, how does that work? How is that okay? Right? I mean, and to what end? I mean, and sometimes it actually takes that thought experiment in some of the conversations. It's like, all right, let's say we don't, right? Where does that lead? We don't have a choice. We have to take care of everybody in our community, or we all suffer for it. And I guess if there's anything, it's that, maybe through some some contagious energy or something, more and more we can do that. Certainly that's what I'm hoping that we are all a part of at Bridges. Just philosophically, that is how we think about this. This is how we approach this. There are no dead ends. Dead ends are not acceptable. So I would hope that philosophy could become more widespread.
Well, beautifully put for off the cuff, both of your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Again, Rich, one last time, how do people find Bridges?
We are at bridgesoutreach.org. You can find our phone numbers for all of our offices on there. You can sign up for volunteer opportunities. You can find out the details of the things that we distribute and need at all times, and do it yourself. Any way you'd like to get involved, we would love to talk about it.
And Fred, how do people find you?
The food bank of South Jersey is foodbanksj.org. And that'd be just go to the website there. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for being here today on a late afternoon on a Friday.
Awesome. What a way to end the week, begin a weekend, and
absolutely.
This was great, Rich. Congrats.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. And best wishes. And Jodi, thanks for having me as your co-host. I'm looking forward to the 5-time jacket. So.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's got one more.
It's like velvet, so it's got to be real nice. You're gonna have to look it up. It's a very nice
all right. Pressure
members
is on.
only. How about members only? We'll go way back.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, I can't thank you both enough. I wouldn't have preferred to be anywhere else on a Friday afternoon. I so appreciate you lending your platform so that I can share some of what's going on with us. I really am grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for the great work that you both do, keeping people, fed, and have a shelter. It's vitally, vitally important. Please follow those who are listening. Follow, like, share, donate, do whatever you can to continue to help make a difference. These people's lives are depending on it and they need the support. So I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what steps, small or large, are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Thanks again to Richard and Fred. I look forward to a follow-up to this maybe next year or a couple months. And hopefully not, we don't talk about it and then wait another 6 months to do it. But I'm so thrilled to have you both be a part of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you, Jodi. Great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Fred.
great week, everyone.
Take care.
Alrighty.